Hi, my name is Hans Eriksson, and I want to welcome you to my fourth installment in building my new short, Battle of the Nutcrackers. This is going to be part of my senior portfolio, and I'm going to shoot it entirely in Blender and using RenderMan RIS as a render engine. So let's go ahead and begin here. As you remember from the last time, I was setting up my initial pre-visualization. I don't know why I have such a hard time getting that out of my mouth. Pre-visualization files, or better known as Previs. So I'll just say that from now on. And in my after my opening credits, my idea was to have a tumbleweed rolling down the street with some soulful Western music playing with some whistling, a little bit like borrowing from the idea of High Noon. And then from there, I was going to go ahead and let me stop this here. I was going to go ahead and start my little action here. And if you remember, how I started this whole thing was I wrote a script. And I put that all into CLTX, there we go. I'm bringing it up, there we go, in Celtx here, which I think is a great software, online software for planning out your shots. And so I started out with a script. And in my script, I just wrote out exactly what it is that I was going to figure for my sheriff or for my whole battle, and how it was going to be played out. From there, I went through and I did I think it's a shot list here. Yeah, it's a shot list, and in it I just kind of went through and I kind of rewrote off to the side here, just trying to keep a good idea of what it is that I'm going to need. From there, I worked on my breakdowns, and this is kind of doing a lot of things all at once. I know in my very first scene it's going to fade in. I'm going to have a text box with Battle of the Nutcrackers. So under here I've got an asset here that I'm going to need a text box. Next I'm going to have the old dusty western town with empty street and a single tumbleweed rolling down the street. Well, what am I going to need? Well, I'm going to need of course maybe a couple horses and assay office and maybe a bank, and I've got some general ideas of different buildings. These are just ideas that I had. And I'm going to need the Nutcracker sheriff, wooden chair, just some different assets that I'm going to need for to build this shot. And then the next shot, I was going to need some of these items here, but I kind of ascertained what I was going to need by actually building a storyboard. And in my storyboard, I kind of wrote out my ideas for the storyboard, and then I began to put shots in, just very, very simple shots from Previs files, so I got a good idea of what it is that I'm going to do. So let's bring up Blender again here, and let's look at a couple of these Previs shots. Let's go File and Open Recent, and this is Scene 2, Shot 1, so I'm going to need Scene 3, Shot 1. Yep, and there's my sheriff. And as you can see, that my assets that I need for this shot are rather limited. If we look here, all I'm going to need is the ground plane, the sheriff's office, the sheriff, and a wooden chair that he's sitting on. I didn't put a wooden chair in there. I guess I could have put a little block in there as if he's sitting on it, but Just wanted to get an idea of what it is that I'm going to need. And I think let's go ahead and look at the next shot, which is open recent. This is shot 3-1, so shot 3-2. Again, you see the sheriff, he's leaning forward and he kind of looks down and he says, aha, I see something down at the end of the street. What is it that I'm going to need for that shot? Well, I'm going to need, even though you don't see the ground plane, I'm going to need it for light reflection. But I might be able to get away with just a ground plane, maybe just fairly big. You know, I may not need this whole ground plane. My next shot would be scene 4, shot 1, where Black Bart is rolling into town on his trusty steed. His trusty steed, of course, is represented by a block. I don't need anything extra. I don't need anything really great. I just need to get an idea. What did I learn from this shot? Well, I did learn that I'm going to need this entire row of buildings here. But I'm only going to need, in this row of buildings, I'm probably just going to need maybe a couple of them. If you look over here, it's 57 foot long. That's all it is. So, you know, a couple buildings in here would probably fill that whole scene out. This one here, quite a bit longer. But the idea here, too, is the buildings at this end are only going to be in maybe this shot. Never again. So I don't need to spend a lot of time on these. These can be very generic, whereas these here might be a little more important. This building here is the livery stable, where he's going to park his horse. And we see that in the next scene. Open recent, that'll be scene 4, shot 2. And this is where Black Bart is parking his horse. Another thing interesting here too I should bring up is when I'm planning these shots, I want to get an idea of where my camera is going to be and just exactly at what angles it's going to be. If you notice, this camera is shooting a little bit down. In fact, if we go to the other one, open recent, shot 1, I'm definitely shooting down on this. And that's pre-planned. There's a reason for that. One of the reasons I think Citizen Kane is the one where you notice that the most, where that kind of shot style was developed. That villains are usually shot as a camera angle down to kind of make it look like they're smaller than what they should be. Whereas the good guys are usually shot either dead on or with camera angle up to make them feel, you know, to make the audience feel as though that the good guy is bigger. It amplifies some strength. So the camera angles are important as well. And how these camera angles relate to your assets around are extremely important. In this shot here, we saw that what we're going to need. In the next shot, let me see, open recent, scene 4, shot 2. I kind of left those same buildings in here, but more than likely, I'll be able to drop off that building right, or half of that. Maybe if that's 2 buildings, I can drop off 1 building. But even more important is I'm only going to catch about half of this right here. So again, these buildings down here are not as important. But I did learn something even more important than that. And let me go back to my very opening shot. If I look here, and let's go to a top view. If I look here, this is my opening shot with my tumbleweed rolling down. My next one is going to be with a camera angle kind of going like this. And this would be the sheriff's office. The next series is going to be right down here at this end here. And again, the camera is going to be kind of pointing this way or kind of like this way. All my shots from that point on for the sheriff is going to be pointing this way or maybe even dead on as he zigzags down the street. And Black Bart here, my camera angle is either going to be pointing this way or again dead on or maybe this way as he zigzags down the street until they meet in the middle, and then my camera is either going to be probably going to be pointing from this direction towards here. When they get into their final little battle, they shoot each other and both lose. So what have I learned from all that? That row of buildings right there, gone. Don't need them. I have saved myself a ton of modeling time. I don't need to put any of those assets there. I've reduced greatly the number of buildings that I'm really going to need to model to put this whole thing together. And that's important to know. Because I could be modeling, I could just go willy-nilly and just look at my suggested asset list and go, well, I'm going to need all of this, and I start building like crazy. Turns out that I may not need half of what I'm proposing to model. So the thing that I'm trying to get across is previs files and shot planning is extremely important, because even though it takes a lot of time to kind of put all that together, to write it out, to build an asset list, to set up shot blocks and the previs files and everything else, it's all necessary. It just really, really helps. If we go through here, we can see that I've taken these different shots that I've done for previs and I put them into the storyboard, and I've been able to write little comments in here. What am I going to need? A ground plane, a sheriff's office, a sheriff, and the sheriff only. That's all. Don't need any more than that. Here, I'm going to need the ground plane for light reflection only. So I may be able to cut that way down in size, which then again saves rendering time. I'm going to need the sheriff, a chair, and the sheriff's office. Here, I'm going to need full row of buildings in the south group, right there. 2 buildings here, the stables, the villain, and his trusty block horse. Second one, I'm probably only going to need 1 building here, and maybe 50% of these buildings over here, and then of course the stable, the horse, and the villain. A lot of information there. It may seem rather general, but there's a lot of information there that is really going to help me in the end in planning my shots and getting this all put together in a very concise, logical way. Save myself a lot of time. Well, I hope you enjoyed this part of making my short film. And next session, I'll probably have all this completed. I won't be returning to it, except maybe to kind of look and kind of get an idea as we're building things. But on my next video, I think I'm going to go ahead and start building out this scene here. I'm going to probably start with the ground plane and then move on to the the sheriff's office there, and I'll probably go ahead and get started also on my Nutcracker. These Nutcrackers that you see right here were just original models from my first video that I tried to do. They're not working real well, so I'll be building brand new ones from scratch. I'll have to do the Nutcracker horse, and I think the next building that I'm going to be doing, of course, is the stables, and then I'll probably be getting an idea of what it is that I think I'm going to need for over here. Again, they're going to be very generic, and I'm going to try and do a little bit of planning as to what other buildings I think are going to go into the scene. So until then, I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in session 5.